Okay, Mr. Sharp, we're going to go over your post-observation. Before your observation, you sent me your lesson plan, and I reviewed it, and I was able to observe you. First question, in general, how successful do you feel the lesson was?
It was moderately successful. I thought the kids pretty much, maybe 75 to 80% got what, achieved the target.
Okay.
I'd like to be more, but
Yeah, I would agree. I felt like you had the targets clearly laid out on your board, and the kids knew exactly what it is that you wanted them to accomplish. And just from my amount of time in there, I could see them go up to the board and demonstrate, maybe not to where they mastered it, but they were at a point where you can build on it. So I would agree with you on that.
all right.
How is it that you know that your students did what it is that you wanted them to do?
Just circulating the room while they're working on their assignment, and then also what they turned in at the end of the lesson, their completed work.
So the completed work and just
And then,
by
like
teacher.
anecdotal, like just walking the room and
Right.
making observations as they're working.
Right. Do you ever use exit slips or anything like that? Or?
Not as often as I should. I do a lot of little mini whiteboards. They'll write
Yes.
answers on that until it got to be a problem. They were like busting all the markers up, so I had to quit
Right.
doing that. So we'll do that. We'll also do this little. It's a online game. It's a website called Kahoot. They create a profile on there, and then they answer. It'll be like a multiple choice question. I'll put it on the whiteboard, and they'll answer it on their phones, and they'll tell me like who got it right, who got it wrong, how
Right.
quick they were able to answer it.
Okay.
And they seem to get a thrill out of playing that.
Right. Well, that's a good use of technology. In addition to student work witnessed, what other student work samples or evidence that you use to determine whether they learned the target?
I think it kind of relates to the first one, like just seeing what they're working on, the questions they ask, and then at the end of the lesson, what they turn in. But other than that, like then when we do the Kahoot, or if we do anything on the whiteboards, I can tell who's
Right.
got it, who doesn't.
Well, another suggestion that I give you is maybe allowing the students to critique each other's work, find mistakes, and if they can explain mistakes to other people, then that's another way that you can tell whether or not they've learned it.
Yeah.
Your classroom procedures, from what I saw, were very organized. The kids know exactly what to do when they come in. They know exactly where to go to get their things. Did you feel like the classroom procedures kind of hindered student learning a little bit? I know student conduct wasn't really a concern for me in the classroom. Everyone was doing what they're supposed to, but what are your thoughts on classroom procedures and the physical space in the room?
As far as the procedures, I need to do a better job like letting the kids. Well, like I was letting the kids kind of do their own thing, and like have one kid like kind of help out and monitor, and they were getting a little bit like pushy with each other and kind of slinging their binders wherever. And so I thought, well, if I monitor it and help distribute it, eliminate that, that's taking my time away from other things. And so if I can get them, hold them accountable for putting their binders up, do a better job and letting the students kind of police each other with that, I think that would be more effective. As far as the physical layout, I'm kind of stuck with what I got, so I can't really do much about it. The way the internet jacks are, you can only have your desk in certain spots. And student conduct, the class you observed was my last class of the day. It's my biggest class, so they're a little squirrely. So it's a bigger challenge, and I think sometimes the behavior kind of doesn't let me do everything I want to do, or I got to modify it because I don't think they can handle it, so they don't get to do some of the things my other classes get to do. So it kind of hurts them in that aspect.
Right. Well, you also have to keep in consideration they're sixth graders, so
Yeah.
with this being so early in the year, it does take them a lot longer to get into a routine.
That's true.
That's not something that's basically your fault. And I agree with you with the room. Based on where your desk has to go, there's not really a lot you can do with the physical space, but
Yeah.
I think you manage the space that you have really well. I like the fact that you have a spot for them to keep their things in the room. That way they're not responsible for it outside the classroom. They have a safe place they can keep it, so they always have their materials.
Yeah.
So, the next question I wanted to ask you, did you have to depart from your plan at all? I know you sent it to me beforehand, but Were there things that you had to deviate from?
Yeah, sometimes like I'll have a lesson, I'll think, well, this will only take a day, and it ends up kind of spilling into the next day, so we kind of push it back. So I can't even remember if we actually did what I sent you or not, but we'll have to push stuff back. And then the bell work took a lot longer than I hoped it would, so that kind of ate into some time. So it was a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like the warm-up or the bell ringer problem, I could tell that it was getting a little long-winded, but sometimes that happens because when you see that they don't understand what they're doing, sometimes it spills over into your lesson because maybe they need that skill to do what you're supposed to do in the lesson. So that's not always bad.
Yeah.
One thing to cut it down, maybe you could cut down the amount of problems that you give them for the warm-up and maybe focus on maybe one problem.
Right.
Or, maybe having a kid work it out on the board while the others are at their desk working on it. Because when they get stuck, they can look and see what that person's doing and just make sure it's just real quick. But when you have 90-minute blocks, I mean, you have a little time that you can.
That's what I got that too. You might as well use it.
Right, I agree. So, if you had an opportunity to teach this lesson again to the same group of kids, is there anything that you would do differently?
I think maybe trim the bell work a little bit. That would probably be a good idea. But as far as the lesson went, I'm trying to get them, I'm trying to incorporate more Kagan strategies and have them do more cooperative learning, and I've been struggling with implementing it with Fidelity and not trusting them to, I guess I've been kind of afraid, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but just like
Apprehensive.
Apprehensive about it, and because they haven't shown me the ability to handle some things. So I guess I just go ahead and maybe incorporate more cooperative learning.
Well, it's like I said, you have to understand they're sixth graders and that maturity level is not where we would like it to be, but if you don't ever give them the opportunity, they're never going to learn it. Right. So I felt like you did a good job as far as allowing them to help each other.
I let them help each other, but I don't have it structured like shoulder partners and face partners like they do in Kagan training. I like to try to incorporate some of that vocabulary so they're not working with the same person all the time.
Right. What do you see your next step in your professional growth for addressing the needs that you've identified through your personal reflection?
The biggest thing I want to get better at is managing the 90 minutes. 45 is too little, too less of an amount of time, and the distance I'm struggling to manage it. It almost seems like too much, but I mean that's a good problem to have. Too much time.
That's true.
I'm just trying to figure out the best way to use it.
Yeah, I know when I was in your situation, a suggestion someone gave to me was to try to have at least 5 transitions. It doesn't always work, but when you get too long-winded in a class and kids aren't changing activities, they get bored. I mean, kids have cell phones and social media. They're constantly being stimulated, so their attention span is always on there. But in the classroom, we can't constantly stimulate them, so we have to have transitions where they're focused on something different, not just the same thing all the time. I just wanted to go over my observation ratings for you. I know I thought you did a great job of creating an environment of respect and rapport. I know you talk with the kids and they respond back to you in a respectful manner, so I thought you did a really good job at that. Establishing a culture for learning. I can always tell when the kids come in, they know exactly what they're supposed to do, and it's academic oriented. I didn't see a lot of silliness in playing. There's always something for them to do, and they could see the agenda on the board, what it is that you expected from them. Now, not all of them did it, but I felt like you did a really good job of redirecting the kids that weren't on task, which wasn't very many at all. Managing classroom procedures, I did put you as developing because I understand when you're dealing with your largest class, sometimes as a teacher you want to make sure that you take over certain procedures, but it does take a little longer when you do them instead of having them do them themselves. But I understand why you do it. But there might be some other strategies you can try to kind of limit that lost instruction time. I thought you did a very good job of managing student behavior. There were a couple instances where you were working with one group and then there was a group that'd be off task. But that happens, and that's something that's just, as you go along, that you develop a little better. But I thought you still did a good job as far as getting around to each table and helping every kid. And then there were some kids that didn't need help, but I still saw you check on them and say, are you good? Do you need help? And they would tell you no. So, communicating with students, I gave you exemplary. I felt like your methods were clear. The kids knew exactly what you were talking about. I mean, you retaught things that maybe they didn't get. I thought you did a really good job. You made it as simple as you possibly could, and I think that's great. Not everybody can do that. I did mark you developing on using questioning techniques because I felt like most of your questions were basic recall questions. What did you get for number 3? What did you get for this answer? You know, there's just different types of questioning techniques that cause them to have to think a little more. But as I said, you know, that comes with time. Engaging the students, I felt like anytime you had a transition, you did a good job as far as getting them engaged. I actually heard a couple kids say, quiet down, because they wanted to listen to what you were getting ready to say. So I thought you did a really good job on that. And I put not available on using assessment and instruction because I didn't get to see the assessment and demonstrating flexibility. But strengths of the lesson, I felt like you had the right number of transitions for a 90-minute class. I felt like your classroom management was pretty good, given that being your largest class. I felt like you did a very good job of explaining it and breaking it down into the different concepts where the kids could understand it. I felt like, for the most part, most of the kids got what you were trying to teach them. And I felt like you had a way of assessing them based on the targets that you wanted them to learn. So I thought you did a good job on that. Even though I felt overall it was a great class, there are some areas of growth that I think you'll be great at doing. Just kind of monitoring the whole class, even when you're working with a couple groups. Maybe not spending so much time on the warm-up, but managing the whole block. I think you'll do a better job of that. Basically, those are the 2 areas I felt that you could use for growth. What did you feel like the strengths of the lessons were?
I think the lesson itself, I mean, it was easy enough to follow, but it was challenging enough where they couldn't just, you know, do it like that. So it kind of got them thinking. But they could, once they got going, they could work independently. Let's see. As far as weaknesses go, I agree with you. I could have shortened it, and I could have just done a better job of just like circulating quicker, and not, you know, like you said, kind of not spending as much time with everybody, and doing a better job of trying to, you know, monitor the whole class instead of getting like zoomed in, focused on one group, and kind of like forgetting about what was going on around me for a little bit.
Right. Well, that just takes time, and I mean, last year when you're on the 45-minute classes, I mean, it's an adjustment for the teacher too when you go from 45-minute classes to 90-minute blocks. So, I know when I observe you again in the spring, I mean, I can promise you you'll have.
I hope so.
The weaknesses will turn into strengths. So, but thank you for your time, and I'll let you get back to work.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go Cubs.